My name is Monica Vale, 45 years old. They called my son's graduation just a piece of paper, and I thought I could swallow that like I've swallowed 100 little cuts from my family, quietly, with a glass of water and a smile that means nothing. I didn't expect confetti or a brass band, but I expected chairs and 2 hours of sitting and a couple of claps that said, "We see you." He finished 4 years. He worked nights stocking shelves and still kept a 3.8. It wasn't Harvard. It was ours. It was what happens when a kid refuses to drown and his mother keeps handing him rope, paycheck after paycheck, double shift after double shift, vacation money turned into textbooks, and leftover tips folded into bursar lines. A piece of paper? That piece of paper was what I told myself on my worst days. Keep going. When I asked if they were coming, my sister said it with a shrug, like she was brushing lint off a dress. It's just a piece of paper. My mother said she was tired. My father muttered something about car trouble, the trifecta. I told myself to be reasonable. People are busy. Bodies hurt. Cars break. Besides, I've always been the responsible one, and responsible people don't make scenes. I wore a navy dress that didn't wrinkle and brought tissues for when the names were called. I cried anyway, quietly, proud, the kind of crying where you tuck your face down so it doesn't embarrass anyone. Afterward, we took photos near a tree that had survived a lightning strike. You could see the scar in the bark, a pale seam. It made the leaves look brighter somehow. He held his diploma holder like it was heavy. We went for burgers. He ordered a milkshake he didn't really want because he knew I liked to steal the first sip. 3 days later, scrolling through Facebook at the kitchen counter, I nearly choked on lukewarm coffee. Balloons, streamers, glitter letters. There they were, my entire family, posing like it was the Oscars. Proud of our little graduate, the caption read. My niece had finished kindergarten. Kindergarten. They had a custom cap and gown, a cake with a photo printed on icing, gift bags with tissue paper folded high like tulips. My dad held a sign. You did it, in pink sparkle. My mom wore a shirt with my niece's face on the front. My sister's smile took up the whole frame. I stared at the screen until the light dimmed and the feed nudged me to see more. Not anger, something hollower. The kind of empty where your hands feel like they don't belong to you. Not a single person had texted me about it. No, come by if you're free. No, bring chips. No, we're doing something silly. You'll roll your eyes. It wasn't the party, not really. It was the ease with which they remembered to celebrate something small and forgot to show up for something big. Or maybe that isn't the truth. Maybe they remembered exactly what mattered to them. I washed the coffee mug, set it upside down on the rack, and tried to be a grown woman who doesn't cry over cake photos. I told myself stories that make it easier to breathe. It's not personal. They got swept up. You know how your sister is. Everything is a production. My chest still hurt. 2 days later, my father called me in a rush, like the house was on fire. Why didn't the car payment go through? Please cover it. The car, the brand new SUV they'd bought 2 months ago. The one I didn't ask about because I am careful with other people's wallets. They had floated vague talk about figuring it out, and I had let the phrase pass by like a leaf in a stream. Figuring it out is a lullaby my family hums when they want you to stop asking questions. I told him I'd call back. Then I didn't. Instead, I sat at this table the way I do when something in me is reorganizing. My son came in from work and kissed the top of my head. It is impossible to hide paperwork from a child who grew up noticing your mood before you did. So I told him it was nothing, and he gave me the look that says, I love you enough to let you lie for now. After he went to shower, I opened the kitchen drawer where I keep the things I don't want to look at and pulled out the fat envelope from when the SUV first appeared. Inside was the dealership packet that had come addressed to me by mistake. Or not a mistake, just a message I refused to read. Welcome, it said, like an usher to a show I never bought tickets for. I had called the dealership when the packet first arrived, and a woman with a voice like polished wood said, Yes, you're the primary on the loan, as if I should have known. My mother had brushed it off that day with airlight words. It's temporary. We'll pay every month. Don't be dramatic. We had to put a name down for the rate. It's nothing. And what did I do? I let the word temporary hypnotize me because I wanted to be the kind of daughter who doesn't make her parents small in front of strangers. I told her not to miss a payment. She said, "Of course," the way people say, "bless you," after a sneeze. Automatic, thoughtless. Now the payment had not gone through, and suddenly I was important again. The speed with which I resurfaced in their universe made me lightheaded, like breaking the surface of a pool and swallowing air wrong. I stared at my phone, watched the missed call badge become a tiny red accusation, and felt something in me tilt. Not a rage, not yet. A click, a rearrangement, like the lens of a camera turning from blur into sharp focus. I opened my laptop, pulled my credit report, and let the clock tick while the pages loaded. Lines of numbers, open accounts, the cold geometry of debt. The SUV sat there, a block of obligation with my name welded to it. My breathing went shallow. Across the kitchen, the graduation program lay on the counter, a curl creeping into the paper where a drip of water had landed. I thought about the scar on the tree, how the struck thing goes on living. I thought about the kindergarten cake, the glitter, the way my father's sign caught the light. We celebrate what we choose to see. I closed the laptop and pressed my palms flat on the table. The wood was warm from the afternoon sun. If I called back, I would fix it, and the fixing would make everyone comfortable again. The story would go like this. Monica is the reliable one. Monica covers. Monica understands. And then next month, when another something slipped, the phone would ring again, and I would answer because that is what I do. Responsibility is a costume that begins to look like skin if you never take it off. But there's a cost to living inside a part you didn't audition for. I stood up and poured myself more coffee I didn't want. Outside, a neighbor's wind chimes tangled themselves into a tune that wouldn't settle. My mind replayed the Facebook photo until it stopped being a picture and became a message. The message was not, "We love her," it was, "We love being seen loving her." I knew suddenly, with the certainty of a weather change, that this wasn't about one missed ceremony or one bounced payment. It was about a pattern long enough to be its own road, and I had walked it dutifully, eyes down, for years. My phone vibrated again. A text from my father. "Please, today." No apology, no explanation, just the urgency of a man who believed the world could be reset with a daughter's yes. I watched the typing dots appear and disappear. Another text. "We'll pay you back." The chimes outside found a harmony for one long, impossible second, and then went back to clatter. I didn't answer. I folded the dealership packet back into the envelope and slid it to the center of the table like a piece on a chessboard. The move wasn't dramatic. It felt small, almost quiet, but I knew the sound it made inside of me was not quiet at all. I washed the mug again, though it was already clean, then turned off the kitchen light. The house exhaled. In the dim, the envelope looked like any other bill. Ordinary, harmless. I touched the edge of it the way you touch a bruise you didn't know you had, testing the border between ache and injury. Somewhere in that border, a thought sharpened. If they could call a degree just a piece of paper, maybe they believed papers don't have power. Maybe they were counting on the rest of us believing it too. I went to bed early and stared at the ceiling fan until sleep finally caught me like a net. In the morning, before the first cup of coffee, I decided on something simple that didn't feel simple at all. I would not call back. I would not fix it. I would look, truly look, at every page with my name on it and see what else had been done in the dark while I was busy being understanding. I would stop being useful and start being precise. Down the hall, my son's door was half open, the light from his desk lamp a thin stripe across the carpet. He was already up, scribbling notes for a portfolio piece, the future leaning forward in his shoulders. I thought about what it costs to protect someone you love from the storms that come with your last name. Then I went to the kitchen, pulled the envelope toward me, and opened my laptop to begin. The dealership receptionist's voice was polite, clipped, and calm when she told me again that I was listed as the primary borrower. "Yes, Ms. Vale, everything is in your name. The account was opened with your social security number and signature." I wanted to laugh, except laughter would have turned into something sharper. My signature? The one I practiced in 7th grade until the letters curved like vines? The one I've signed on 1,000 checks and loan deferments and sick notes? That signature doesn't slant like a child gripping a crayon. The fax copy came through to my email with the subject line, Your records. My stomach knotted as I opened the attachment. There it was, my name, but not mine. Crooked letters, uneven spacing. It looked like someone had traced it from memory, while their hand trembled with either guilt or indifference. Maybe both. That night, I printed the document and laid it flat on the dining table under the light. My son wandered in, towel around his shoulders, hair dripping from the shower. He glanced down. "Mom, that's not your writing." His voice was steady, but the edge of anger in it caught me off guard. He's usually so measured, so unwilling to criticize anyone in the family. I shrugged, too tired to mask it. "No, it isn't." He waited for more, but I didn't give it. He left the room with a tight jaw, the kind that hides words better left unsaid. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I gathered the packet, the fax signature, the original welcome letter, and walked into a law office 2 blocks from my job the next afternoon. The lawyer, a lean man named Tolland, with glasses perched halfway down his nose, studied the documents without speaking. His silence weighed more than any speech. Finally, he pushed them back across the desk. "This is fraud. You're liable on paper, yes, but you also have a case, a strong one." His words landed heavy. Case, fraud, liable. My life had been built on working hard enough that words like that didn't stick to me, and yet here they were, sliding onto my skin like oil. "What do I do?" I asked, half whisper. He folded his hands. "That depends. Do you want to hold them accountable, or do you want to keep the peace?" Keep the peace. Peace was never real in my family. It was a ceasefire built on my compliance. I told him I needed time. He nodded, gave me his card, and said, "Don't wait too long. The longer you delay, the more leverage they have." 2 days later, my sister showed up unannounced, holding a tray of brownies sealed in grocery store plastic wrap. She smiled like someone auditioning for the role of caring sibling. Her eyes flicked around my living room, landing on the stack of papers I hadn't bothered to hide. "We were hoping," she started, voice sweetened like powdered sugar, "you could spot us just this once. The recital trip, Orlando. You know how much this means to her." I didn't invite her to sit. No. She blinked, then let out a laugh that scraped like glass. "Come on, don't be dramatic. You've always been the generous one. Don't start acting like a stranger now." I picked up the faxed loan signature, held it up between us. "This isn't mine. I talked to a lawyer. I know what you did." The shift in her face was instant, like watching a mask slide sideways. For a moment, I thought she might deny it, but she didn't. She just sighed, rolled her eyes, and said, "We all help each other sometimes. That's family." I stared at her, realizing she wasn't embarrassed. Not even a flicker. To her, it wasn't betrayal. It was redistribution. My hard-earned name turned into their currency. She left with the brownies still on my counter, muttering about how I'd changed. That night my mother called, her voice breaking into rehearsed sobs. "You're tearing us apart, Monica. If you follow through with this, these lawyers, these threats, you'll destroy relationships you can never get back." Relationships? I closed my eyes and pressed the phone tighter against my ear. What she called relationships were really transactions. My credit in exchange for their affection. My silence in exchange for their approval. My labor in exchange for a seat at a table where they never saw me anyway. I didn't argue. I let her words flood my ear like cold water, and when she finished, I simply said, "Good night, Mom," and hung up. Later, alone in the dark, I opened my credit report again. I traced my finger down the lines of debt, interest rates, account numbers. Something nagged at me, a tiny fluctuation in the score I couldn't explain, like a shadow at the corner of my vision. I bookmarked it for later. For now, I told myself it was probably an error, but a part of me, the part that had been silenced for decades, whispered, "No, it's something else." I closed the laptop with a quiet click, my hands trembling just slightly. The envelope from the dealership sat in its usual place on the kitchen table. I rested my palm on it as if touching the paper could remind me I wasn't imagining things. The ceiling fan hummed, the refrigerator clicked on. The house was ordinary, steady, safe, and yet, inside me, something was shifting. A small, defiant ember, glowing hotter by the day. This wasn't about a single SUV. This was about all the years I'd been expected to pay the cost of being the reliable one. The problem with always catching people when they fall is that eventually they stop seeing the edge of the cliff. And I was done being their net. I should have known the first loan wasn't the end. Families like mine don't stop at one bite when they find a vein. They drain it dry. It was a Wednesday afternoon when the letter came. At first, I thought it was another past due notice for the SUV. But when I slit the envelope open with my thumb, I froze. Not the dealership this time, a store account. Balance $8,472. Opened 5 months ago. The letter listed recent activity, purchases I would never make in a lifetime: a 75-inch flat-screen TV, 2 leather couches, a gaming console, designer handbags. Every item delivered straight to my parents' house. I set the letter down on the kitchen table and just stared at it, my heartbeat in my throat. My name was right there, clean and printed, like it belonged to their shopping spree. I dialed the customer service number and spent 40 minutes in a labyrinth of automated menus before a supervisor finally came on. I explained, calmly at first, that this was a mistake. She paused, then began to read off the most recent purchases. 2 weeks ago, leather sectional, order confirmed, signature on delivery receipt, Monica Vale. I nearly dropped the phone. My signature again. Crooked, wrong, not mine. The world tilted. The audacity wasn't shocking anymore. It was numbing. Like someone tapping the same bruise until you stop flinching. I drove to their house that evening, telling myself it was just to see, just to know. The SUV glistened in the driveway, polished like a trophy. Through the living room window, I saw it all: the new television dominating the wall, the leather couches gleaming, shopping bags from the same store tucked by the stairs. A gaming console blinked blue beneath the TV, humming like a secret exposed. It was all there, every item from the list, sitting proud in plain sight. I knocked. My sister answered, an iPhone still in its plastic clutched in her hand. She smiled like I was dropping by for coffee. "Oh, hey," she said, like everything was normal. Behind her, I caught the sound of my mother laughing with my father. A cake box sat on the counter, balloons tied to a chair. Another celebration, another one I hadn't been invited to. She handed me an envelope with my name neatly written on the front. "Mom said to give you this." My fingers trembled as I slid it open. Inside was a letter from an attorney. Their attorney. It detailed a proposed transfer of the auto loan fully into my name, releasing my parents from all liability. Tucked behind it was a consent form, already filled in with my information. A forged signature scrawled across the bottom. Mine, but not mine. The room seemed to narrow, the edges pressing in. My mother walked in from the kitchen, holding a slice of cake, smiling faintly. "We were going to save this for you," she said. My sister added, "Can you help set up the new streaming account? The TV's amazing." For a moment, I felt like I was standing in a dream where nothing made sense, where betrayal dressed itself in frosting and balloons, where fraud wore the face of family. They were so casual, so convinced of their own entitlement, that they didn't even try to pretend anymore. I folded the papers back into the envelope and slipped them into my bag without a word. My mother's smile faltered. My sister frowned. "What's your problem? You're acting weird." I didn't answer. I turned, opened the door, and walked out. Their voices followed me down the walkway, calling my name, demanding I explain myself. But I didn't turn back. In the car, I sat with the envelope in my lap, staring at the lawyer's letter. The implication was crystal clear. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't desperation. This wasn't even casual dishonesty. This was a plan. They had already told a lawyer I agreed. They had prepared documents. They were ready to lock me in legally, to erase even the illusion of choice. The rage didn't come in flames. It came like a tide, slow and steady, filling every hollow in me. It was clarity, sharp and cold. They weren't hoping I wouldn't notice. They were counting on it. That night, I didn't sleep. I laid everything out on the table: the dealership packet, the forged signatures, the store account statement, the attorney's letter. I arranged them like pieces of evidence in a trial, each one a stone stacked on the other. And for the first time, I didn't ask myself whether confronting them would help. I didn't ask whether keeping the peace was worth the cost. Instead, I asked one simple question: what happens if I do nothing? The answer was obvious. They would keep going. They would keep building their lives with my name as the scaffolding. And eventually, when the weight grew too heavy, I'd be the one crushed under it, At dawn, with the first thin light cutting across the table, I picked up the phone and called Tolland, the lawyer. My voice was steady when I said, "I'm ready to move forward." By noon, he had filed a police report on my behalf. Certified letters went out to the dealership, the store chain, and their attorney. Each one demanded immediate removal of my name from the fraudulent accounts, a full cessation of action, and confirmation within 10 business days, or we would escalate to formal legal proceedings. I sealed the copies in envelopes and stacked them on the counter. The paperwork felt like a fortress. For once, I wasn't the one exposed. I didn't call my family. I didn't warn them. The silence was my weapon now. That evening, as the house settled into its usual hum, my son came into the kitchen. He saw the neat pile of envelopes and raised an eyebrow. "What are those?" "Boundaries," I said quietly. He didn't ask more. He just nodded, poured himself a glass of water, and sat across from me. We ate dinner mostly in silence, the kind of silence that doesn't suffocate but steadies. Later, when he went to bed, I sat alone in the kitchen, staring at the paperwork spread across the table. The refrigerator buzzed. The clock ticked. Everything ordinary, except the shift in me. For once, I wasn't waiting for the next phone call. I wasn't bracing for the next excuse. I was the one setting the terms. And I knew, with a certainty that made me feel taller somehow, that the real storm hadn't even begun. The silence didn't last long. 3 days after the letters went out, my front door rattled. From pounding so hard it woke half the neighborhood. I didn't open it. Through the peephole I saw my mother, her hair unbrushed, face flushed with panic. She shouted my name until her voice cracked. When the door held firm, she switched to pleading, her palms pressed against the glass. "You don't understand what you're doing, Monica. You'll ruin us. You'll ruin yourself." I didn't move. My phone buzzed 23 times that day. Calls from her, from my father, from numbers I didn't recognize. I let them all die in silence. By the second day, the tone shifted. My sister's email landed in my inbox. "You're really going to drag your own family through the mud? Over some stupid paperwork?" She ended it with, "You've always been jealous anyway." Jealous. The word made me laugh out loud, a jagged sound in an empty kitchen. Jealous of what? Of being used? Of being invisible until they needed a signature? Then came my father's text, short and clumsy. "Sorry. Things got out of hand. We'll talk. Please cover it until next month." As if the SUV, the couches, the forged documents were nothing but spilled milk on a counter I could wipe up for him. But the worst was the call I didn't expect. My niece. Her voice was thin, shaky. "Aunt Monica, Mommy says you're suing us. She says you hate us. She says we might never see you again." I closed my eyes, gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles whitened. "Sweetheart, that's not true. I love you. None of this is your fault." She started to cry. The sound sliced through me. I wanted to tell her everything, that her mother had dragged her into a storm she couldn't even see. But she was a child. Children shouldn't carry the weight of adult betrayals. After she hung up, I sat in the quiet and let myself cry for the first time since it started. Not for my parents, not for my sister, for her. For the little girl already learning that love in our family came twisted with conditions. A week later, my lawyer called, with news that added another fracture to the ground beneath me. The store chain had investigated the fraudulent account after receiving our letter. They found that an employee had pushed the application through without full verification. He was an old high school friend of my sister. Security footage showed her picking up the bags, smiling wide as she wheeled out merchandise that had my name tied to it. The store offered a quiet settlement, eager to bury the scandal. My lawyer looked at me over his glasses. "You can take their money and move on, or you can escalate." I didn't even hesitate. We escalate. The lawsuit was filed the next morning, against my parents, my sister, and the store. Fraud, identity theft, damages. For the first time, the paper trail wasn't just my prison, it was my weapon. The response from my family was silence at first, calculated and cold. Weeks passed with no acknowledgement, as if they thought ignoring it would make it evaporate. But then, one afternoon, a new envelope arrived. Inside, their counterclaim. They accused me of authorizing everything. Said I'd agreed to the SUV loan, to share the store account, to every purchase. Claimed I was only turning on them out of spite. The words burned. I held the document like it was toxic, rereading the lines until the black ink seemed to blur. Spite? After decades of bailing them out, After sacrificing vacations, hours, years, they had the audacity to paint me as vengeful. I called Tolland, my lawyer. His voice was steady, clinical. It's a tactic. They want to scare you into settling. But fear wasn't what I felt. It was something heavier, something sharper, determination. The day before our first court date, my son sat me down at the kitchen table. Mom, I want to testify. I shook my head immediately. Absolutely not. This isn't your fight. But he leaned forward, eyes steady. It is my fight. I overheard something months ago. Before all this blew up, Grandma and Aunt Lydia were talking about using your credit while they still could. I didn't think much of it then. I thought it was a joke. But now... He swallowed. Now I know it wasn't. I wanted to protect him from the ugliness of the courtroom. But looking at him, I realized he had been living in this storm too. His tuition, his future, his peace of mind, all gambled behind his back. If he wanted to speak, it wasn't just loyalty, it was truth. The morning of the hearing, the courthouse smelled faintly of bleach and dust. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. We sat on hard benches, our documents stacked neatly in Tolland's briefcase. Across the aisle, my parents and sister sat stone-faced. My mother wouldn't meet my eyes. My father stared straight ahead. My sister twirled her hair, looking bored, like she was waiting for a dentist appointment. When my son took the stand, I thought my heart would split in two. He spoke calmly, describing the overheard conversation, the way my mother had brushed off his questions with a laugh. His voice didn't waver. He was clear, concise, believable. Their faces didn't move, not a flicker of guilt, not even surprise. They sat as if he were describing strangers. The judge listened, pen scratching occasionally, his expression unreadable. The air in the room was thick, every breath heavy with anticipation. When the gavel finally struck to adjourn for the day, I felt both drained and electrified. This wasn't over, not even close, but for the first time I saw it, the possibility of justice. I walked out of that courtroom with my son beside me, his hand brushing mine. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was a promise. The ruling came on a Wednesday morning in a courtroom that smelled of paper and nerves. No shouting, no gasps, just the steady voice of the judge as he read the decision. My name was cleared. The dealership had already removed me from the SUV loan under pressure. The store chain agreed to a settlement, plus a written apology. And then came the part I hadn't let myself hope for, restitution. My parents and my sister were ordered to pay back every cent, car payment, store charges, credit recovery fees, plus additional compensation for identity theft and emotional damages. $48,000 in total. The words seemed to echo in the room, even after the judge lowered the papers. I sat very still. My lawyer nodded, calm as ever. But inside me, something uncoiled. Not joy, not triumph, just release. Like a rope I'd been dragging for years, finally slipping from my hands. Across the aisle, my father muttered something under his breath and walked out. My sister followed, her face like stone. My mother lingered a moment, eyes locked on mine. No apology there, no remorse, just something bitter and unreadable. Then she turned, and that was the last time I saw her. The weeks that followed were quiet, in the way a landscape feels quiet after a storm. There were no more desperate phone calls, no sudden knocks on the door, no frantic demands wrapped in guilt, only silence. Some nights, the silence felt like freedom. Other nights, it felt like a void. The restitution came slowly, in installments. My sister's wages were garnished, forcing her employer's hand. My parents tried to delay, claiming hardship, filing objections, but the court rejected them. Month by month, the money trickled in. By the end of 5 months, after legal fees and credit repair costs, I was left with just under $23,000. I didn't rush to spend it. I let it sit, untouched, like a marker of everything I'd endured. My son and I went car shopping in July. Nothing flashy, just something reliable. We found a used hybrid, low mileage, clean title. I paid in cash, up front, his name on the title alone. No cosigners, no hidden agreements, no surprises waiting in fine print. He held the keys in his hand and looked at me like he couldn't quite believe it. On the drive home, I sat in the passenger seat, watching him grip the wheel, and thought, this is what doing things right feels like. Life settled into rhythms I hadn't known in years. Quiet mornings, bills that only belonged to me. No sudden calls asking for help that meant sacrifice. I started therapy, not because I was breaking, but because I was finally free enough to rebuild. My therapist asked me in our first session if I missed them. I thought about it, then answered truthfully, I miss the idea of family, the version I'd built in my head where people show up for each other without keeping score. But I don't miss them. I don't miss the manipulation, the guilt, the endless taking dressed up as love. Word drifted back to me through neighbors, acquaintances, online scraps. My sister had moved into a smaller apartment, blaming me for her downfall. My father sold the SUV. My mother told anyone who would listen that I'd chosen money over family. Let them. I didn't bother correcting the story. I was done curating an image of us that never existed. One night, my son and I hosted a small dinner. Just him, a couple of his close friends, and me. Food, laughter, music in the background. No drama. No barbed jokes passed as affection. Just ease. He talked about grad school, about architecture, about wanting to build something lasting. I don't know if I can swing it financially, he admitted. I reached across the table, covered his hand with mine. I've got your back, I said. And this time, it wasn't a sacrifice extracted. It was a choice freely made. Months have passed since the judgment. 8, to be exact. My parents haven't spoken to me. My sister blocked me entirely. The silence that once felt unbearable has become the calmest stretch of my life. I used to believe being the responsible one meant stitching the family together no matter the cost. I thought peace was swallowing hurt, smoothing things over, paying debts that weren't mine. But real peace feels nothing like that. It feels like the hum of a refrigerator in a quiet kitchen, like your son's car pulling into the driveway under his own name, like knowing your signature belongs only to you. Sometimes I catch myself looking at old photos, birthdays, holidays, smiles framed in cheap glitter borders. I don't throw them away. I keep them. Not because I want to go back, but because they remind me how long I lived inside the illusion. Love isn't love when it erases you. If they ever decide to reach out again, they won't find the same Monica, the one who caved, who gave in, who carried their chaos until it bent her. They'll find someone who finally chose herself, and she isn't going back.